Wow. Dang.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's study session for the City of Casa Grande. It is 6 o'clock. Mr. Raines,
He's not messing around.
you want to introduce the first part of the program?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, our first presentation this evening is an update by our Census 2020 representative. And I know that everybody followed this particular project very intently, and Maria wants to just speak a little bit about the cooperation and coordination of our 2020 census. And so I'll hand it over to her. She's got a short presentation.
Thank you, Larry.
Oh, okay, thank you. Good evening, my name is Maria Vianney Cardenas. I'm the U.S. Census Bureau representative for all Southern Arizona, actually 10 counties now. But I'm here to give you an update and to say thank you to the City of Casa Grande for the effort and support on making sure your residents get count on the 2020 census. We did have and face many challenges like everyone else, but ours was very historical. But, we did it. We finished on October 15, and we're still doing our job. So I hope I can know how to work this. Bear with me. This is the agenda. I'm going to give you the 2020 Census National Recap, the regional, which it covers 12 states. Our regional office is in Denver, Colorado. I'm also going to talk to you about what's next in 2021. What are we doing? And then one of the newest services that we are able to provide to local government in our region is the census data services. It's something new that we do have, kind of like a college university now in our system, and local governments will be available to learn from us. We can train you to learn how to utilize the data. A lot of people know there's data, but they don't know how to use it and how to will affect your housing, your education, and your impact specifically for COVID-19. So that's a great tool that we have new for you, and it's free. I will be contacting you guys and see if you guys are interested. City manager, and you can, train your staff, specifically when you need grants and, money for your education. So the national self-response rate is 67%. We finished with 67%. Our projected self-response, our own projected, was 65.6. The response rate in 2010 was 66.5. So we overpassed our own projected self-response. When we say self-response, it's meaning people doing it on their own. Doing it on paper, doing it by phone, or doing it by online. It was the first time in the history of the census that people were able to do it online. It took about 5 to 9 minutes for households to complete the census, and we didn't have no problems with the data, collecting the data from the internet. People, it was easier and preferred for them to respond online, and we know why, because the pandemic. So it was perfect. We already had that in place, so we didn't know the pandemic was coming. But we were able to collect 79.86% from internet. So if you see those numbers, people were doing it from the comfort of their home. The non-response follow-up, actually, the City of Casa Grande host, I would say, 357 census workers were staying here in the City of Casa Grande on your hotels for 2 months and a half. So all of them, they were paid by the Census Bureau to be here in Pinal County doing the non-response follow-up, meaning knocking on doors when people were not answering the questionnaire online, on paper, or by phone. So in 2010, 47.2 million addresses were counted in 69 days. In 2020, we did 64 million counted in 60-day period. By October 15, all Pinal County are in our records. The home addresses were counted 100%. The group quarter facilities, meaning hospitals, jails, places where people were staying with the pre-arranged staying. If you see the blue bar is 2020 and the gray one is 2010. So we did quite a few more than 2010. The targeted not shelter outdoor locations, people living in their car and outside of Walmart, under the bridges, in the park. We did 37,000 of those locations. And this is nationwide. So the service-based enumeration, shelters, soup kitchens, we went over there. 53,000 of those locations were counted under the group quarters program. So we also have 313 partnership specialists like me working through the whole 12 states and including tribal and all media. We had 48,439 enumerators, and like I said before, 357 were located specifically for Pinal County, staying in Casa Grande. The area census offices, we had 50. The one covering Pinal County, it was located in Tucson, Arizona. And we had 619 partners like you, helping us to motivate and educate the community about the importance of the census. We had a complete count committee, like we had one here in Casa Grande, 1,261, including 11 states complete count committees, which Arizona had one. So this is the rate. Arizona, we finished 32 with 64.1% of self-response. And I wanted to put this graphic so you see the difference between 2010 and 2020, and for all, the locations of your interest. So Casa Grande in 2010 did 63.2%. In 2020, we only increased 0.5%. We were hoping that it was gonna be better than that, but again, we face so many challenges and people leaving towns before, we started doing the census, so it make a lot of difference. So this is the census track. The brownish color is the highest non-self-response. The darker blue is the highest self-response. So your city, those zip codes are the ones that respond better. And the 65,194, which is part of Casa Grande, I believe, in some the county, that was in the 30%. So what is next? So guess what? We're having April 30th. As for the Constitution and now the executive order, we have to release our counts on April 30th of 2021. That's for the state counts, for the apportionment. For the redistricting, it will be available in 2021. We just got a press release earlier today, and I'm okay to announce it, that we're releasing these counts on September 30th of 2021. For that redistricting. Right now, we're doing the post-enumeration survey. We're asking and calling people, what happened to the census? How do you feel it work? Is the internet something that you would like to see in the future? This one would tell us and produce the overcount and the undercount. So this is a great survey that we're collecting all the way from now to October 2021. The American Community Survey, the 5-year period, it was released on December 10 of 2020, and it's great data information that I mentioned before that I'm able to help you to navigate on it for your different programs. This is the top 5 household surveys that we do. A lot of people tells me why the census is still here. Well, guess what? We do the 2020 census every 10 years, but we do different surveys every single month. The decennial census is counting how many people living in your house, who are they, but the American Community Survey and all of these surveys, it tells you the story. Who are those people? What type of education, income, household? It has so much information. So if they ask you why the census is still calling me or sending me surveys, it's because we do 110 surveys every month in a different topics, in a different scenarios that we need to put together. So this is the program that we're implementing now, and it's training you how to navigate in the data program. And this is a great opportunity. If you guys are interested, I will send you the information and let me know if you guys want to do that. So we're here just to say thank you. The participation from all of you guys make this 2020 census historical more than monumental. And it was trusted voices like yours and, the schools and different organizations and nonprofit organizations in your city. They were part of our Complete Count Committee. They help us shape the future of your community for the next 10 years. People tell us, oh, we were helping you. And we're like, yeah, you were helping us, but you were helping the city of Casa Grande. So they make sure what type of population you guys have. So I just wanted to share a little bit of the feedback when we were at Walmart doing the mobile questionnaire assistance with people. People were responding. I was very impressed that on one day we fill out 37 questionnaires just in an hour and a half. So it was great. So the Census Bureau is sending you this gold certificate to the city of Casa Grande for being a member of the 2020 Census Community Partnership and Engagement Program. And like I said before, making us have a successful census. So it's here. So I would like to give it to you guys. And this is coming from our national office, the Census Bureau. Some organizations were classified under gold, silver, and bronze, but the city of Casa Grande earned the gold one. You guys did work very hard. So Blanca, are you able to do some remarks before we finish?
Well, we wanted to thank the census for including us in their partnership, number one. Number two, we really want to thank the city of Casa Grande. It was really your support, your financial support was an immense help to the success of the census this past year. The schools were also a great partner, APS, all the chamber. I can go on. I'm sorry, I don't have the list with me, but I just want to make sure that the city, you mayor, council, we're just so grateful for the support that you offer the committee, particularly the financial support for the banners, to make sure that there was awareness. And thank you, Maria, for coming and meeting with us every month and for guiding us through the process. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Can we get a picture maybe with the plaque?
Sure. And before
Larry, do we
I
have somebody-
forget, the self-response I give you for the city of Casa Grande doesn't mean it was the final count. The final count was 99.8% for Pinal County, and the other percentage, it was done by the enumerators, okay?
And just to add to that, Maria was a workhorse. She drove us very hard. And between Blanca and Ralph, they were a great team. So thank you, guys.
And Mayor, if I may, can I make a couple comments? And Maria, again, I just wanted to thank you for just always being there. I know when we had questions, you were always there. And then, of course, Ralph and Blanca, you guys stepped up again, and we really, really appreciate it. No one else was raising their hand, and you guys offered to chair that committee, and it was a good, well-managed and coordinated effort by all. Especially the school districts, like you said, they were critical in this. Unfortunately, we didn't expect it, but, we just kind of plugged along. And finally, I wanted to thank LaTanya. She was instrumental with the city and on the committee, making sure we had all the banners and all the print materials and everything. So she's not here, but she's really deserves that gold certificate, because she really represented and helped the city so much. So Larry, if you can make sure you send that information to her.
And Mayor, if I could say, and I don't know if Blanca and Maria know this, but, you'd mentioned the banners that were great additions. I saw them all over town. And in fact, when we extended the census, I had several teachers, and I know there's one in Stanfield and I believe one in Casa Grande, that requested if they could steal those when the census was over, because they actually are refurbishing those and putting those in their rooms, and because of the pictures of the kids and and the different uniforms and stuff. And so some of those have been already recycled. So it was great. So. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. All right, Larry, next on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the next item we have is a presentation on the Compton class study that staff has been working on for the year. And I'm going to ask Mr. Barber to come up and give a bit of a overview before he hands the baton to our consultant, Matt Weatherly. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Mayor McFarland, members of the council, we are indeed pleased this evening to be able to bring you a report on our employee classification and compensation study that's been underway for the last number of months. I think in our budget workshop last year, we talked to you about the planning efforts of getting underway and how important it was for us to have an outside look periodically from an independent consultant to come in and look at the issue of classification of our employees and related compensation, and also a benefit component. And as you know, all of our city employees are assigned a position classification, police officer, secretary, and what have you. And each one of those classifications is in turn assigned to a pay range, a range in our pay plan. And our strategy in terms of pay competitiveness is to compare our midpoint with midpoints of those cities that we compare ourselves with. And the very first step in getting underway was to bring a representative group of comparators, 17 cities in the county that we would compare ourselves with, and get reaffirmation from you all about the legitimacy of those. We wanted to make sure that you were comfortable with those comparators. And so you affirmed that, and so we had that list ready to go when we issued our RFP for consulting services. And we were able to secure a public sector personnel consultant who does a lot of Arizona work, and in fact worked with us in our last study. And you have to go back to 2008 is the last time that we did an outside compensation and classification study. That is not to say that we didn't maintain our system in subsequent years, but there were a lot of things that happened after 2008, and even several years ago, an RFP was issued for a study, but we were able to move ahead with it based on a number of issues that I'm guessing based on a number of issues. I wasn't here at the time. And so we were able to launch the study, and the first part of that is classification. All of our positions have a position description. The classifications have a position description that provides the essential functions of each of the positions, minimum qualifications, education, and those kinds of things. And so the first step was to talk about classification, and from that flowed the compensation side. So we had all of our position descriptions currently posted up on a website. We gave our employees access to those and asked them to review. For those that didn't think they were close, we provided them the opportunity to fill out what's called a position description questionnaire. It's about a 12 or 14-page document that's very basic. This is what I do. And several employees did take advantage of that. Once our employees had the opportunity to look, We asked them to funnel their work through their department director, their supervisor, before it came to us and to our consultant. Our consultant then did his work with those, with the work that we got from our employees, and put those back up, and then we gave our supervisors, our department directors, if you will, an opportunity for a final review, and then finalized all of that. And so our position descriptions, we believe, are up to date, and they're accurate. And then we turned attention to the compensation side. And as Matt will be telling you in a moment, the data is more readily available out there today than ever before because of technology. And so we have about 140 position classifications in this city, different position classifications. And our goal this time around was to compare, or benchmark is the term, as many of those classifications as we possibly could with our comparators, our 17 cities in Pinal County. And we were very fortunate to be able to do 94 or so of those and get actual data, which we felt really good about. And so all of the data was brought forward. Matt's going to talk to you a little bit about trending. Also, we trended the data because we're looking at it today, and we're not going to be reviewing again until the spring of 2022. And so we want to make sure we don't fall behind. And so that data was trended. All of that came together and produced a report that you have before us this evening. Matt has a short slide presentation. He'll stand to answer any questions that you have, and then I'll come back up also. One question I wanted to answer, even though it hasn't been asked yet, is why now? Our original goal, our hope, was that we would be able to get the study completed and bring it to you for the possibility of implementation on January 1st. We wanted to do this apart from the regular budget process so that we could bring very specific focus to the issue of employee compensation and benefits. That's still in our mind now that we're bringing it to you with the opportunity or the possibility of implementing this for the pay period coming up on April the 1st. That way it would be fully in place as we got into the meat of our budget process. So we're really able to look at this issue in and of itself as we move into the budget process. So with that, I'd like to introduce Matt Weatherly. He represents Public Sector Personnel Consultants, and he has a presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Appreciate the opportunity to get out of the house and come and visit and hopefully either answer or artfully dodge any question that you might have. Home game for me. I didn't have to go through airport security to come see you. Just got to drive from the valley. So we do probably 40 or 50 studies throughout the United States every year. Every one of them is a little bit different. We walk into history, certainly, everywhere that we go. So definitely welcome both the opportunity to work with your staff again, as well as be here this evening. What I've prepared will go fairly quickly. Scott touched on some very critical points. So I'll have a little bit more detail to fill in on each of those and a little bit of our methodology, as well as a high-level set of our findings. We did invite the employees to review their position descriptions and or complete a job questionnaire. We have completed now the compensation and benefits survey. We're dusting up kind of the last of the benefits notes on some leave benefits for your shift personnel, but I'm happy to say that that's awfully close. And then we have reviewed the placement of all jobs onto your pay grade table. Quick notes on classification, don't want to glaze over that because it is a very critical element on which we're building a compensation discussion. Once we identify what the jobs are, we want to identify what they're worth. There's about 140 different jobs. We're proposing a few reclassifications and a few new job descriptions or a few new position descriptions to best reflect the work that's currently being performed today. Those have been fairly well managed, I think, in the recent years, but there was an opportunity for a little bit of movement, certainly a little bit of updating and refreshing on some of the language, and the employees played a critical role in giving us some actual job duties that either were missing from those position descriptions. Some of them had a date stamp, that does go back 8 or 10 years. So it was a great opportunity to do that. So we've reviewed all of that information and then drafted updated position descriptions. The salary survey, as Mr. Barber mentioned, the day one conversation always involves the where do we get people from, where do we lose people to, who has jobs like ours. So this list should be fairly familiar to all of you, but it is indeed kind of the green light that we need to go collect data. And so we engage in good conversation with each of these agencies. We collect their job descriptions, their benefits data, their salary structures, their pay ranges, their organization charts, in some instances their budget documents, to kind of dig in and make sure that we're doing an apples to apples comparison of as many jobs as possible. I do have some salary survey illustrations that kind of reinforce some of the summary data that appears in your draft document there that's in front of you. But to give you an idea of what a benchmark job looks like, I have a few illustrations of our survey work. What we're showing here is a comparison on paper, really. We're comparing job for job based on job duties, the structure and the pay range that's afforded to like jobs in those comparator agencies. Now, not every agency has every one of these jobs. This particular position, and most positions, we compare midpoint to midpoint. So when I say midpoint to midpoint, the goal is kind of twofold. One, I want to make sure that your structure is competitive. And when I look from agency to agency, the width of some of the pay ranges and pay grades that are afforded to different jobs varies depending on the job that we're talking about. This particular benchmark is an example of one of about 90 different jobs that we were able to survey. This one has both public sector as well as private sector data, so that bottom note there, ERI, that's Economic Research Institute. That's a published salary survey that we subscribe to that gives us really good insight into the private sector for like jobs. Now, there's an abundance of portability for some of your jobs, but not all of your jobs into the private sector. But office and clerical, labor and trades, professional and technical positions, we attempted to include both public sector as well as private sector data to answer two main questions when we do the survey. First, how do we look? How are we doing compared to those that we're competing with? Right behind that is where do we want to be? Where do we need to be in order to recruit and in order to retain? In the upper right-hand corner, you'll notice on paper anyway, our midpoint for this particular position is about 7% behind market. The other examples that I have vary. An example of a professional position, accountant, about 3% off that range midpoint. Again, you can see probably about 15, 16 data points there. Police officer, we like to also expand our public safety positions and compare at entry and compare at top out. Some of your competitors have a very formal placement guide as well as very specific step structures. You have a step structure for all of your jobs, but there's sometimes a sensitivity to being very competitive at entry as well as competitive at top out. And then salary administration, how long does it take me to top out? How do I move through that scale? So we do a little bit additional analysis kind of for the summary purposes. I just wanted to show a couple of examples of the data that sits behind some of our findings
So
and
Matt,
recommendations.
if I
Yeah.
look at that, I'm sorry for
Yeah.
interrupting. So if I'm looking at the police officer, that 64,177, is that Casa Grande?
No, actually, I realize that I have a column that's hidden. If I look at your current at the midpoint, let me pull that up real quick. I apologize. It'll be in that summary document as well in the backup.
So, because I don't see us on there.
No,
so-
you're right. I have a column hidden in my illustration that I didn't mean to hide.
So
but
we're
I do have-
2,500 under that 6,400 midpoint then?
Yes.
Okay, so I can do the math.
Yeah, no, for
Okay,
sure. Your
okay.
midpoint, and it's really at step 6-ish, I think, is about 62 something. Yeah, 61.6.
Okay. So just
But yeah, I'm realizing in
subtract that variance then off of that number.
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That'll work. Thank you.
No, thank you. I realize that I'm not showing your current midpoints in here. I usually have a bunch more columns in here. I was trying to get them to fit onto the presentation. I apologize for that. Firefighter, a little bit more competitive, but certainly a minor variance there. Usually we use plus or minus 5% to define competitive. We were able to benchmark almost 100 positions, and I say that there's probably about 25 that fell on the cutting room floor. We kind of used a cutoff of about 7 data points to say, all right, is this sample size large enough for me to kind of pick a hill to die on? And that was, how do we look up against the market? We wanted to see a big enough sample size to be really comfortable with our overall kind of findings here. Roughly, it's about a 70-30 split. If I use plus or minus 5% to define competitive, about 70% of our jobs were surveying low. About 30% of our jobs were in pretty good shape. Now, pretty good shape, in part being relative, but if we use plus or minus 5%, give me a little bit of margin for error. The goal here is when we're done for all jobs to have a similar relationship to market. Currently, there might be some positions that are at 85 or 90% of market, other positions that are at 95 or 98% of market. And ideally, even if you can't, eat that all at once, we want to try and get to as consistent of a spot as possible for all positions, if that's back to within 5% of market or back to within kind of an average of market. We also looked at benefits. That document is also, in its stamped draft, but in the packet that you received, we looked at health insurance contributions, who pays what for family and for dependent coverages, everything from retirement contributions to paid time off, ad pay, certification pay opportunities. Really similar to an audit, what you want to hear, no major findings there. One positive note, I think there's some history to this one as well, but when I get to about 15 years with the city, my paid time off looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm a few days ahead of market average, which is a good thing. And again, there might be some history to that in terms of maybe there was a time where we either couldn't do an adjustment or we couldn't quite reach market with pay, but we wanted to get there and reward some longevity. So you look at that certainly as a positive, I think, without saying that we're underdoing it or overdoing it in any major component. Pay plan updating, we have modeled pay grades for all positions. That also appears in your draft document. I don't believe there is any action that's being requested this evening, but what we are doing is realigning in our modeling here all positions to be back within 5% of market. What that occurs, that's a paper, right? So everything that's come out of my mouth, I think up until right now, has been a paper exercise, comparing your structures, comparing job descriptions, modeling new pay grades. So what does it mean for the people? In this particular instance, what we are modeling and what we are providing to you ensures that if my pay grade moves, I move with it. So if I had attained step 4 or step 5 in my pay grade, but you move my pay grade, I'm going to get to return back to step 4 or step 5 in my new pay grade. So I'm going to realize the market adjustment that is intended for my position. That amounts to that cost there, just under 5% of base payroll in order to achieve that. Jobs need to move on the structure so the pay grades move. The individuals move with those grades and maintain their step. So that costing there, that's illustrated there, just under 5% of payroll, reflects a full market adjustment for the individuals that are impacted by those pay grades moving. Okay? That, loosely as fast as I can talk, gets us started. Are there questions? Are there comments or anything that we saw on the slides that we want to look a little bit deeper at?
Man, I had one question. And when you do that comparison and you compare us to Avondale or something like that, is there a cost of living thought in there? In other words, housing price here versus housing price in Avondale. I mean, how do you factor that in, I guess? I'm just trying to understand how to compare apples to apples, because a lot of times, data is data, and it's hard to sometimes compare an apple to an orange if you don't have, a level playing field, if you will.
Yeah, no, I think historically, the intent has been that this list balances itself out with respect to size and cost of living. There are certainly some Pinal County and some Pima County agencies in here that could swing it the other way, I think as well. So the struggle that we have always had is attaining the cost of living versus the wage differential. Now that data exists. However, it's never one for one. Right. Yeah, where if cost of living is higher, we move such and such wage lower by that amount, and vice versa. And so we haven't fuzzied the math. We get asked to all the time because we do this work all over the United States. And it is absolutely a challenge. But I believe the historical intent of this list, both from a size, population, scope, and cost of living, when you look at it and you average them all out,
there's no factor you can factor in and say, okay, well, I know in Avondale I'm going to pay $1, 20 cents more a gallon for gasoline.
Right.
I'm going to pay $100,000 more for a house. So those factors, in my opinion, should weigh into it somehow. I don't know how you do it.
Sure.
I'm not suggesting I know how that's done, but I do know that in Pinal County, I believe that our cost of living is lower. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't raise the level of employee pay. I'm just trying to get my arms around it. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's plenty of data out there, to support and bring back to you what those metrics would be and what those numbers would look like. I think the preparation that would be required would probably be also on the opposite end of the spectrum, because you're not wrong. I think if you look at individual elements that either make up a CPI or a general cost of living, there are some of these agencies that would, not so much bring your numbers down as they would potentially bring them up. But if you were to apply those, we can very quickly bring that, to you, when you consider adoption and provide some staff recommendation. If that would certainly provide a comfort level, we would be able to weigh in on that and identify if that has an impact on the wage recommendation, components individually. Very, very willing to do that.
All right, well, I think it'd be interesting to see it. I don't know that it would change the outcome, but I think, and I understand we also want to make sure that our employees are compensated, fairly, and that we don't lose them to an Avondale, for example,
Right.
right? So, because Avondale's paying a police officer, $1,000 more a month. So
Maybe.
and that's kind of why that's why as a city council, it's kind of why we've asked for some of this data, and as a city, we do it on a regular basis anyway, but I think it was also came out of the city council to ask our staff to take a look at compensation, because we want to make sure we are competitive, right? Because we don't want to lose people to the valley, especially as we grow. That's going to be more and more an issue for us. So those are just my thoughts. I'm kind of thinking out loud, but it's not an easy decision because we have over 400 employees, right? So it's not like this is a small company. It's actually a pretty fair-sized company if you look at it from that perspective. And I think we need to, because we are competing with the valley. And so, anyway, I'm rambling, so I apologize. But go ahead.
What gets fascinating, I believe, is when you look at, and let's pick on Avondale for a minute, not directly, but indirectly. If you look at them in our data set, there will be instances where perhaps they're paying a little bit more than you. There'll be instances where perhaps they're already paying a little bit lower than you. So there's not always a direct correlation that perfectly makes sense, and I'm a data guy, so I'm looking for things to make sense.
Right.
Where in some instances, if we say, hey, your cost of living is higher, I need to lower your number, and they're already lower than you, they're going to come down additional, right? I can normalize the other end, where if they're consistently winning, out of this list of 17, agencies or 18 agencies, I'm more concerned as a competitor for a Queen Creek. Their cost of living, their cost of housing is probably growing. Certainly as an agency, they're growing. They're coming online now with PD. And I would say out of the data set, they win. They win probably 75 or maybe 80% of the fight, out of your market data. But their cost of living may appear to be similar to yours or lower. That may not be the case.
It's not.
But you kind of get my point, is by agency, I can identify out of this list who's exceptionally competitive with their wages. Not so much turning a blind eye to the cost of living, but there are instances where the cost of living is lower and they're killing everybody on pay. And so it's an interesting balance. We don't have a Gilbert in here or a Chandler or a Mesa or a Tempe or a Scottsdale. They tend to want to constantly elbow each other out of the way to achieve those kind of top three in the valley. So you get a little bit of an echo effect. I think Flagstaff springs out, to me, exceptionally high cost of living.
Right.
As a Big Sky conference or whatever they're in, we use them all the time when we're doing work in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and in Bozeman, Montana, and some of those places, because their cost of living is about 20% higher than national average. So your point is well taken, and I'll be happy to share all of the research that we can do on your behalf to answer both the cost of living differential as well as the wage differential question.
Thank you.
Happy to do that.
Mr. Powell.
Yes, I've just out of curiosity, how do city council members compare between cities as far as compensation?
As far as compensation, we were not asked to look at it, but I do have some of that data readily available because we just completed that for the city of Eloy. Council member, mayor, and then I think there were maybe some either questions around.
And I think, Scott, you have some data on that as well, right? So Scott can give you that, Mr. Powell.
Yeah, I just have never heard a comparison and just curious, so.
I've seen it.
Have you? Was it good or bad?
That was a very technical response. Yes, no, I have that response in my bag too.
But he does, Scott's got that. Would you supply that to Mr. Powell, Scott? That sheet that you've given to me?
All of us.
Yeah, or give it to the whole council, that'd be fine. Thank you. Donna?
Just a comment. Thank you very much for the information. And as a county employee, I went through similar several years ago with my staff, and it's always interesting to see where we belong. I'm really happy to see that our benefits are very competitive, because that is important to people. And I understand what the mayor, is referencing as far as, the cost of living, but we are so close to the valley. And for us to not be competitive with the Avondales and even the Chandlers and those because of the fact that we lose good people, because if they can make $1,000 more a month and it only costs them $200 in gas to drive up there, it makes sense for them to do that. So I guess for me, this is really good information. I'm a little bit surprised that, how much under we are in our positions, but I think that we can't do anything about it if we don't know. And
Right.
data is really important in that. So thank you.
Good point.
Lisa,
Is
did you have
this being
something?
under pervasive, or is it just strictly in certain areas?
I'm sorry?
Is, you say we're below the,
Well, in some
the
of
medium, I'm just
these,
wondering, is that-
according to,
is that
of the
among-
information that
is it
Matt gave us.
pervasive across the,
Yeah.
the list of jobs, or is it just in certain areas?
Well, what, did you say
70%.
There's 70%.
Yeah, 70%. It didn't
70.
discriminate. Yeah, 70% of your positions were more than 5%
Or
behind.
more than 5%
And
Right.
under.
it didn't discriminate with respect to, pay rate. For example, it wasn't limited to manager and above or entry level. It bounces all over the place, job by job. The great thing is that if we use the same sample set for all positions, you get really good consistent results that make sense. That's important, because I do have some clients that tend to compare their maintenance, and trades and clerical folks to one group, and their managers and directors to a different group of cities, and that sometimes gets a little bit noisy. So we have a nice consistent market model here, but it does, the summary applies to all positions. It wasn't where there was a clear pattern around a certain type of position. I mean, anecdotally, there's plenty of positions that we hear about everywhere that we go that are very difficult to recruit and very difficult to retain. I think post-2013 as well was when you saw the great majority of movement. So as things thawed out, from the last, go-around of 08 to 12 difficulties, you started to see a COLA plus a step, a market plus a step, a merit plus a step. You saw a lot of growth from about 14 to 18, to the tune of 3.5–4% a year wage growth. And so you kept up with part of that. But certainly it had been a while since the structure had been looked at in this kind of holistic of a way.
Right. Lisa?
And kind of piggyback on the whole cost of living thing, and I think that's important. I know you talk about the amount of positions that are under, but, that cost of living, it's big. I know even with the private business, we have a tough time with attorneys because we pay lower because our hourly rates are lower in the city of Casa Grande. So, of course, there's a lot of businesses that face these challenges. So I don't think we automatically just go to the highest level
Right.
or whatever. So that cost of living piece is critical. And it's not just the city of Casa Grande that faces those challenges. It's all over. So I'm curious where the county is, and if they're at that same percentage. And, I don't know if that's something that you can provide us, just to give us an idea, a reference of where they are.
We could do a couple of things. I think given the presence of the data that we do have, we can answer a couple of questions by comparator. We can stack up these comparators up against you one by one instead of job by job.
Right.
We can look at each comparator by this particular market set, to say, well, where does the county fall up against these 17 agencies, or where does, and then fill in that blank. So we can inform that. I think that the other piece that, you could, kind of not so much, digest or struggle with, as at least help inform, because I think data does play a key role when you're, talking about general fund and other funds that are impacted by wages, because you're a service organization. I want to make sure that we get it right. I want to make sure that you are comfortable with the data. So certainly we can we can help. I think we can provide, some additional information by comparator, for that next discussion.
And then one more thing, Matt, so after this is done, I think it's been, how many years since we had this? Over 10 years we've had a study?
Yeah, 13.
13 years.
Yeah.
So with
08.
this, will we be good for another 10 years? Or how often? Hopefully, no. But
Checking the
how
8 ball. Hold
often?
on. Yeah, checking the magic ball. That's the challenge. We have trended and positioned your structure, to account for the middle of 21 into 22 on purpose, right? I think that historically there has been an application of either an aging to market data and or an adjustment to the structure, a general adjustment to the structure. That remains appropriate. I'm getting worse and worse at maybe making estimates and prognostication given COVID, because I have some markets right now that are doing 8 and 11% salary adjustments for some of their public safety positions, and I can't get my head around that in 2020, 2021. That's offset, and I would never advocate like doing anything on the back of another group, right? So I'm trying to take this whole civilian, SWOR, and everybody and reposition you at market. And I think that it's going to be appropriate to monitor these individual agencies. You kind of start dialing for dollars about March to say, hey, are you plugging anything in for your budget? Are you doing it to your structure? Are you providing it to the people? Are you doing both? Right, so generally, I would say up until things maybe ran into the ditch a little bit last year, it was very common to see maybe a 2 or 2.5% adjustment to the entire structure, as well as a budget for a step, right? So in some agencies that might have been 2.5 and 2.5, or 2.5 and 3, or whatever that meant, agency by agency. Maybe it was a 2.5 to the structure, and we budgeted for another 2% for merit. Yeah, that was very, very common. Up until then, right? So up until, February, March, of last year, and then things kind of hit the skids a little bit. We are noticing that in 2021 now, what really occurred for 2021 were at minimum for a lot of agencies, what were perceived to be the contractual obligations for public safety, right? So step increases were given. So at a minimum, wages continued to grow at 2 or 2.5%, pandemic aside. I think it remains to be seen what combination of structural movement and people movement will occur, from this coming year and beyond. But I think as simple as asking these agencies what they're plugging into their budget for 22, for 23, right? That it won't get you 10 years, right? However, if you adjust structures when market says so and you continue to move people, I'm a huge fan of continuing to budget for steps whenever you can do steps. Right, I think the minute you stop or you can no longer afford to move people, and then the structure lags behind, then it gets really expensive to move both again. Right, so definitely a course correction, definitely not an insignificant number, that we're proposing here as far as dollars go and percentage of payroll. However, if we can get to maintenance mode, that maintenance mode looks like a little bit of structural adjustment and continued step adjustments.
Matt, did you have a comment?
It was just same thing you guys said, so I won't beat that point, but just, I'm no statistician. I didn't like that class too much, which is why I don't do that.
I have an ironic story for you.
But in my simple mind, we have 10 cities on there, and we can say this one is +3 and this one's -2 per cost of living. House price, just basic stuff. So I'm not going to belabor the point, but that's very important to me.
Yeah, the wage differential is a different number. Traditionally, the lower and closer to minimum wage you are, the more impacted you see the wage based on the cost of living. So for example, an entry level, I'll pick a job I don't think you have, a cafeteria worker. A cafeteria worker in Phoenix is going to be making $12.15 an hour. A cafeteria worker in Los Angeles is going to be making $15 an hour. However, that first line supervisor of those individuals are going to be paid much closer together. And the manager or the director over that food service business is going to be paid probably within 5% of one another, right? So that difference flattens out depending on the job that we're talking about. So I would say indirectly the value of an accountant in your city or in Avondale or in Queen Creek, fairly comparable, right? Going to be a little bit noticeably different, if not considerably different, for a laborer, for a parks maintenance worker, that tends to have a little bit greater of a swing, when we start to apply a wage differential.
Okay.
So, I don't want the numbers to go all over the place, but if I can at a high level summarize to your edification, here's the cost of living differential for each, here's the wage differential for each, and I can answer those two both very quickly. Okay.
Bob?
Mayor, I just want to give kind of a counterpoint to having cost of living information as part of this process. I'd like to see it as well, but I think it's more of a Chamber of Commerce issue on cost of living being a little less here than it may be in some of those communities. I think the fact is that the methodology that's used by getting a variety of communities for us to compare ourselves to is valid. We're not going to be the top and we're not going to be the bottom, but we want to be somewhere in between. I'm afraid that it may send a poor message to our staff, to our employees, if we start throwing out there that, well, the reason we're not paying you this much is because the cost of living is lower down here. There's a lot of factors on why people live and work in Casa Grande, and I think that's a slippery slope to start figuring in cost of living into this process. I think it's good information to have, and it's a good selling point to bring people to Casa Grande or to have them stay. But I disagree with it being included at some point with this study.
I don't think anybody's discounting your report. I don't think anybody's discounted that. I think all a couple of us were saying is that we'd like to see the data, that's all. And it's not that it needs to be rolled into your equation, but that, it's just another factor that I would like to see.
That was my only caution. I didn't want it to be part of this. I thought it would be sending a bad message.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Matt.
You bet. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Matt and his crew have done a great job for us, and just another landmark along the way. Casa Grande has a very long history of being competitive in terms of pay and benefits, and I think that the average tenure in our workforce, as shown by some of the retirements we've seen lately, I think speaks well of the idea that you all and your predecessors have committed to being competitive in terms of compensation and benefits to our employees. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate you receiving the report this evening. We need a little direction coming back and whether we're going to be able to move ahead with this per our plans, but I would defer to Larry for closing comments.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, again, I want to thank both Scott and Matt for the job that they've done on this particular study. Obviously, a lot of data. Just a couple of points, and I know that we've made a number today. I just re-emphasizing the fact that, at least from my perspective, there's a number of reasons that really have driven us to the point where we're at from a competitive standpoint. Part of the issue that I think that we deal with, and Matt touched on it very nicely, is that we haven't done general adjustments or anything like that for a couple of years now, and so we have been trying to fund the merit. As Matt had indicated, that's been something that we have focused on and something that we want to continue to focus on. Our plan from a staff's perspective, again, I know that Scott gave a bit of the overview, is to come back to the mayor and council. It sounds like we've got a little work that we need to do perhaps in advance of that to get to perhaps look at this cost of living. So we'll have a better sense from Matt as to how long that may take. But ultimately, the plan would be that we would be coming back in March, sometime in March, for the mayor and council to have some level of consideration and implementation for this fiscal year. The council did approve, as part of the budget process, the funding of this proposal starting in January, and so we'll do the work that the council's asked us to do this evening, and we will disseminate that and have something on an agenda here in the near term.
And Larry, and I don't want to speak for everybody else, but from my perspective, I would suspect that you would come back with a plan, right? A plan in terms of how we would roll this in, and that it wouldn't be, I wouldn't suspect, it wouldn't be all at once, right? It would be a process that we would go through. It's a 1 year, 2 year, whatever it might be, to try and bring these up. especially those that need to come up substantially, and I don't know the exact numbers, so
Right.
I'm kind of speaking out of school there, but I just would anticipate that we would have a plan on how we could bring us up to that median bar.
Sure. And the particular information that was disseminated tonight does do that for a year, obviously, for a complete fiscal year. We had what I consider to be a very fruitful discussion this morning amongst the executive leadership team. At least in my mind, and I know that both Scott and Matt mentioned it tonight, for me, it's about reestablishing the foundation of the plan that we once had and moving back into what I consider to be more of a long-term type of a maintenance. And I wish I would have used the word this morning, maintenance mode, Matt, that I think is something that's a good definition of this. But Mayor, to your point, at least in my mind, this was going to be some level of a multi-year for some of the positions. There's some that we're going to be able to achieve with what's being recommended here tonight. There's others that we're likely going to, as you can tell by the data, that we're still going to be off the market. And at least in my mind, it's better for us to take an incremental evaluation of those and to at least do some level of review again, perhaps in a year from now, next spring. But we'll definitely put some numbers together, some information together to give the mayor and council more of an understanding of how we would approach this to bring all of these positions up to a midpoint.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Scott. Okay, we have 5 minutes, I think. No, 4 minutes. We'll stand adjourned for 4 minutes. All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's city council meeting for the city of Casa Grande. We'll call the meeting to order, and the first order of business is our invocation and our pledge of allegiance. So please remain standing for all, and Pastor, the floor is yours.
Please join me in prayer. Gracious God, we gather here this evening to ask your grace and mercy upon this session. We ask you grant your wisdom upon this council so that they may make wise and just decisions for all the people of the great city of Casa Grande. May there be peaceful and productive discourse among all those who gathered here today. May our single-minded purpose be to accomplish the best for the most according to your way. Grant your blessing upon the proceedings this evening and each one here present. We ask all these things in the name of our Lord. Amen.
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 Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Gloria, let the roll call show that all the council members are present. For the minutes,
Mayor, we just have one meeting minutes approval that we need to okay for the claim, that's the claim, city regular meeting minutes from February 1st, 2021 is all we have to do tonight, and I move that those are accepted as shown.
Second?
all right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the council meeting minutes from February 1st. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next is claims to the city.
Mayor McFarland, I move to accept and pay the claims dated January 27th to February 9th, 2021, as presented.
Second?
No, go ahead.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor to approving the claims of January 27th through February 9th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, claims are approved. The meeting agenda, I do have one change. I want to move item N, which is our reports, to precede item M, which is the executive session. So we'll move that up. Larry, any other changes? Any changes from council? Okay.
Oh, you're good.
Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Tonight's agenda is approved. Move to item F, which is our special presentations. We have some tonight. So excited to see our officers here, or two officers, Mosier and Ramirez, here tonight. And Gloria, you're going to perform this swearing in?
Right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jacob Ramirez,
Do solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the laws of the state of Arizona. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same. And defend them against all enemies. Foreign and domestic.
Anybody taking a picture?
And that I will faithfully. And impartially. Discharge the duties. Of police officer. According to the best of my ability. So help me God. Congratulations.
Congratulations. And welcome to the city of Casa Grande. Not that you weren't here already. All right, next we have the swearing in of the firefighters tonight. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them. Holy cow. Were you guys one academy class?
Yeah.
Were you all the class? Congratulations. And welcome to the service.
Absolutely.
I don't know about
We have
you.
high expectations of you guys, so,
Mayor, I think this is such a good program to swear them in
yeah.
in council chambers and recognize them from the start on, so.
Yeah, that's nice.
And also, I don't know about you guys, but they seem to get younger and younger. Right? They look younger and younger. It's like, wow. Not that we look older.
I think that's a fact, Lisa.
That's awesome. That was
Right. Also tonight, and I don't know that any of them are here, but we are going to recognize the 2020 Leadership Academy graduates. It's been a long haul. They've been in the academy for a year. So, not necessarily active, but I did want to read their names into the record.
And Mr. Mayor?
And congratulate them.
Mr. Mayor, they are participating virtually this evening.
Oh, okay.
This was their final session, so yes, they are watching.
Great. Well, congratulations to all of you, and forgive me if I butcher your name. I want to congratulate all of our participants, and it was a big list this year. Benjamin Bersano, Brian Keller. Let's make sure you let me know if Brian Keller showed up tonight too. Carol Williams, David Quijeda, Deborah Bersano, Donald Fraunheiser, Dino or DJ DeLuca Jr., Donald Schwarzkopf, Fred Bauer, Gina Peralta, Chuck Dozel, I should know Chuck's last name. Grace Mullen, Yvette Roach, James Gwynn, James Pacheco, James Summers, Jim Sewer, Jennifer Klopthor, Jennifer Strock, Kim Vandenberg from our HOHP, Leonard Bruce, Lincoln Keller, that's Brian Keller's son. He went through with his father. Lisa Miller, Kaya Scott, Debe Ramos, Nicholas Medell, Richard Castillo, Robert Alonzo, Rosa Menchen, Sharon Keeling, Stephanie Siegla, Taylor Hedges, and Thomas Stephen Bettis. So congratulations to all of those participants in our 2020 Leadership Academy.
That's one of the bigger classes we've had.
It is. And we invite them to actually come back whenever we do this virtually again. Is that going to be next year probably?
Well, Mayor, it's difficult to tell, but we are definitely going to be sending them their diploma for graduating the class this year. And we'll likely be inviting them back to a formal meeting when we have either capacity or have an opportunity to have more people in the
Yeah,
audience.
I know at the first meeting this year that I attended, we were going to invite them back to participate in the field trips
Yeah.
that they missed out on. So, because that's kind of one of the more important parts, to go see all the city facilities and that sort of thing. So, all right, thank you, Larry. All right. Next, then, we have the consent agenda items. All items listed with an asterisk are considered routine matters and will be enacted by one motion and one roll call vote of the council. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or member of the public so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence of the agenda. Does anybody have anything you want to pull off? Anybody from the public? Okay. Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion, or actually, entertain a motion.
Mayor McFarland, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Lavender.
Yes.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Huddleston.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, the only other item on the agenda besides our executive session tonight is the ordinance and resolution K1. This is the final ordinance and final read of number 1178.239.1. Gloria?
You ready for the reading, Mr. Mayor?
Is there any discussion on it? This was the one that we had a couple no votes on last city council meeting. That's why it's on this instead of the consent agenda.
I'm glad to see the R4 zoning on there.
Okay? Any further discussion on it?
We just voting on the same thing we voted on last time, Mayor?
Yes.
Unless somebody has some questions that you want to ask of staff. Same thing that was presented last city council meeting. Okay, seeing then, I'll call for an ordinance number.
Ordinance number 1178.239.1. An ordinance of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, amending zoning ordinance number 1178 and its subsequent amendments by changing the zoning from planned area development to mobile home residential on approximately 58.77 acres of property generally located east of Thornton Road and north of O'Neill Drive, Casa Grande, Arizona.
Mayor McFarland, I would move for approval of ordinance number 1178.239.1 as presented.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Lavender.
No.
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Herman.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Huddleston.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
No. All right, so it passes, and so we'll move then to reports. We'll start over here to my right. Bob, you want to go first?
Mayor, thank you, but no report tonight.
Okay, that's easy. Mr. Powell? You report you're alive and you're here.
Well, I was going to say, I report that it's fun to be up on 2 feet and running around, so
We're glad you're here.
I actually, Lisa used the magic, and I didn't get it. That was the O negative is supposed to keep you from getting it, which both of us
We were
have.
hoping, we were
Well, I got it and she didn't, so I'm glad that
Yet.
you didn't.
Yet anyways, right?
That's all. Okay.
Matt,
I do have a few things.
go ahead.
The first, glad to see Mr. Powell back too. And
Thank you,
and,
sir.
yeah. pointing in the right direction, so that's good. The Youth Commission got to meet virtually and hybrid. We have hybrid meetings now, and they were excited. I found out that they are tired of COVID-19 and going to school online, but they are planning a scholarship, and they started talking about what should the subject be, and basically it came out, it's not going to be about COVID-19 or how we feel about going to virtual school, because they're tired of that. So there will be a big announcement, and I think it'll be pretty cool. And then, since it was a beautiful day and we were social distancing, they went and cleaned the Garden of Sunshine with rakes and shovels and cleaning stuff and rags, and so that was very cool, and it was a great day to be outside. And then Mike Edwards from Community Services Department helped us out there, and he is going to help position the new artwork and put it on the concrete pillars like we have out there. And Jeff from Community Services got everything arranged for us, so we appreciate them. And the Rotary Club, which has been doing a lot of work, you know, doing feeding, food distributions every month, is having their annual scholarship raffle, fundraiser, and auction. And I happen to be selling tickets for it if anyone's interested. They are $25 each, 5 for $100, and our new Chevy, Dodge, Ford, Ram, I think I got them all, dealership, Jerry Seiner Automotive Group was our banner sponsor, donated $5,000, so that's the grand prize for the raffle, $5,000 cash. Wow. So they're getting in the community too. And I did have some interaction with the police department over the last couple of weeks, and I got pulled over, just happened to see them, and I agree with Lisa's assessment. I was like, wow, these kids are in high school still. But I want to say both of the officers I had dealings with, and again, I wasn't pulled over or anything like that, but they were both professional. They didn't know who I was, I don't think, so, because I don't want anything like that. But they handled everything great. So I'm glad to see that we have such good officers and young officers that are taking care of our city. So it was great. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Matt. Lisa?
The only thing I wanted to comment on is, and I know the fire chief is here, and I don't know if the police chief, but, you know, it's so nice when you see, you know, we joke about how young these firefighters and police officers are, but, you know, what I notice and I think is important is how diverse these classes are, and having women and, you know, minority, you know, I mean, it's just good to see that it reflects our community. And I know, you know, Chief, that you've really made a point to make sure that happened, and I just want to thank you for that. And as far as COVID, I'm so glad you're okay, Dick. Yes, I was hoping that you and I would get through it.
I absorbed your immunity.
We kept joking about, you know, all the studies that were saying people with O negative blood types. But I do want to remind people, and I'm sure the mayor will go over the numbers, that, you know, COVID is still out there and there's still people getting sick. I know numbers are down and hospitalizations, but, you know, I had a friend that was on a ventilator for three weeks and is now in rehab. And until you see how it affects someone, that, you know, it's still out there and people are getting really sick. So let's just try not to let our guard down. You know, people still do their part, and hopefully we can get through. I have a wedding that I postponed till September, so I'm hoping we can go through with it in September. So anyway, so please don't let your guard down. Let's just try to do this together as a community and get through it. Stay healthy.
Thank you, Lisa. Donna?
Just a couple things. The CG Cares, the last round ended last week, and I know Stephen and Lisa and Carla and a few of us have been reviewing those. So I'm encouraged by some of the businesses that we didn't see the last round, so that was good. I also, a couple kudos, the Chamber of Commerce they've been doing a lot of things even though everything is closed down, and I was able to attend the before hours get together virtually, and I know everybody, me included, is so sick of Zoom and all that stuff. But hats off to Renee, because she's really done a great job trying to keep people engaged, so that was nice. And also, congratulations to the new elementary school board president, Gilbert Mendez. A lot of us know him. He was one of the youngest candidates for city council a number of years ago, and I'm just really pleased that he stayed involved and is on the school board, and now he's in a very important transition leadership position with the passing of David Snyder. So I'm just really proud of him. So congratulations to him. That's all.
Absolutely. Thank you, Donna. Jeff?
Well, February is Black History Month, and our community has had a lot of influential African Americans, but I want to highlight a couple families. The Robbins family, Orlinda, who attended a segregated school here in Casa Grande, it's Orlinda Roberts now, was our first African American county school superintendent. She's currently superintendent of Santa Cruz, and her son John was just named the head football coach at Vista Grande. So that next generation, her brother Randy, first NFL player to come up through our school system, played in 3 Super Bowls. He came back to our community, coached our football team, is now the athletic director. And then the Eddings family, Bill Eddings was our first African-American city councilman, and 3 of his children have served in education, in leadership roles in education. So lots to highlight there. I saw what they did in Eloy. Mayor Powell did a great job highlighting African-American contributions to his community and felt like we need to do the same here.
Thank you, Jeff. Just a couple things on my list. I wanted to just make sure everybody was aware that the 2 water bills that were in the legislature that will help our Pinal AMA passed and have been signed by the governor, so they are officially approved. So that's good news. And those bills are completed and out of the legislature. So, and again,
Which ones are those?
the ones on designations, the ones that the Pinal partnership, not the Pinal partner, but the Pinal, Pinal AMA and the stakeholders that put together Mr. Miller's program.
Right, okay.
I think you were involved in those, Mr. Powell. Just to give you an update on COVID numbers, they are coming down. So this is kind of the false Monday because Mondays are Sunday reports. So I try not to look at them too close. But in 85122 we had 1 reported infection for Sunday.
Wow,
That's the lowest we've ever had. So I'm expecting a little bit of a spike tomorrow because of some lagging reports. But be that as it may, the overall numbers and the 7-day weekly trends are down.
Yeah, that's
and
really
they're negative, so that's good. I haven't seen this decrease like this since probably July this last year. So I'm cautiously optimistic. But to Lisa's point, please don't give up your guard. Continue to wear your face masks, even if you've had your 2 shots. We are at about 12% infection, meaning 12% of our population in 85122 has had the virus. So now the question is not, do you know anybody who's had the virus? Do you know anybody who hasn't had the virus? That's the reverse question. And I think that we're seeing a good trend. I think we're probably at about 10% of vaccine in our community. So put that around 25% of us have some level of immunity. So I think that's also cause for optimism, and hopefully these numbers will continue to drop down. The elementary schools are going back on March 1st. The high school, I talked to Dr. Beebe tonight, and he told me that they are still waiting for the county level benchmarks to get to yellow for 2 weeks in a row. I did tell him that on the numbers today, that's through today, that 85122 is below 100 infections per 100,000. We haven't been there since July. So that's a good indication. The problem is it lags by about a week and a half in terms of it getting onto the benchmark that the high school looks at. So we could be 3 weeks away from the high school opening up. He told me it probably would be after their spring break, which is the week of the 15th of March. So maybe the 22nd, maybe somewhere around there. Anyway, enough on that. Just also wanted to give everybody an update on some work that our planning department and Mr. Tice has done. I think they rolled out last Friday some automation in their department in terms of signing up for inspections. So that's all now automated. You can use your smartphone. You can go in and order an inspection on a house. All of our builders now are using the automated system to to file their paperwork and all of their plans, and we automatically send it back to them, so they don't need to come in. So that whole automation system that we talked about, probably 2 years ago, is now maybe a year and a half. 2 years? It's been a while. Anyway, it's finally coming to fruition, and I'm excited and really appreciative of the planning department and all the work they've done on that. So thank you, Paul. Please tell your people thank you too. State of the City is Wednesday, March 10th at 1 p.m. So it will be virtual, but if you want to mark your calendars for that, we'll be dialing up an exciting virtual presentation of the city of Casa Grande.
Thank you.
If we don't make it, we got to bring a note from our mother.
Yeah, I'll know if you're not on there, Mr. Powell. Some updates on Lucid. They are moving forward. I think everybody's pretty much heard it. If you didn't see the CNBC broadcast of the video, it's pretty exciting. It shows a virtual build out of the facility by 2028. By 2028, that's what that whole complex will look like. It's 5 million square feet. Right now, it's 900,000 square feet. So imagine 5 times bigger than what it is sitting there now. And by the end of this year, their forecast is to hire 1,600 or have 1,600 personnel employed. Now that's between Tempe and here. By the 2028, it's 6,000 employees. So that's a little bigger number than we originally had anticipated. And where all those employees are located still may be up for interpretation in terms of, I believe most of them will be here, but I think they'll be between California here and Tempe. Tempe is going to be a receiving location, a receiving warehouse for a lot of product and pieces, and then it's all shipped down here. So that's just an update on Lucid. Continue to work with them. I know they're going to start their second phase and third phase here probably in the next quarter, and that's another 3 million square feet of added facility. So pretty exciting times, a lot of great stuff happening, and I think that we'll get through this pretty strongly after the pandemic is over. That's all I have. Does anybody else have anything else you want to add? Yeah, Matt?
I forgot one positive thing too. I got texts from across the country about narco wars on National Geographic, and our SWAT team and our Linco Bearcat was featured prominently on there from Pinal County and the city of Casa Grande. And a lot of my friends were like, hey, we saw you guys on TV. And they were it was pretty cool. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? All right, I'll take a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll move into executive session. Let's take a 5-minute bio break.
Good, because I want to ask you.